If you haven't heard the noise yet, here's the story. UFC champion Ilia Topuria is chasing boxing legend Terence Crawford, fresh off his historic win over Canelo Alvarez. And he's trying to spark the next McGregor-Mayweather crossover.
Me encantaría irme y medirme en contra de Terence Crawford, que yo no tengo ninguna duda del resultado.
Now let's cut through the noise right away. Ilia Topuria isn't just mad that Terence Crawford walked out to his song. That's the headline, the meme, the surface-level drama people laugh about on Twitter. The reality? This is Topuria planting a flag. He's not satisfied with being an undefeated UFC champion. He's chasing something bigger, the kind of payday, the kind of spotlight that only comes from stepping into boxing's most sacred stage. If that sounds familiar, it should. We've seen this movie before. Conor McGregor did it with Floyd Mayweather, a crossover nobody thought would happen, until suddenly the fight was signed. The world was watching, and both men cashed in enough to build their own kingdoms. Ilia Topuria is looking at that exact playbook. The walkout song is just the bait. The real fight is for attention, leverage, and the right dance partner. And right now, Topuria has his eyes locked on Terence "Bud" Crawford, the man who just beat Canelo Alvarez to become boxing's undisputed super middleweight champion. But here's the question. Does Topuria actually stand a chance in a boxing ring against one of the greatest technicians the sport has ever seen? Or is this pure theater, a hype cycle with no legs? I'm Reggie Cross for Behind the Lines. Let's break this down. At just 28 years old, Ilia Topuria is undefeated. 17 wins, 0 losses. And he hasn't just won. He's demolished names that were supposed to be untouchable. First, it was Alexander Volkanovski, a man many considered the featherweight GOAT. Topuria stopped him. Then Max Holloway, another legend, another knockout. And when the UFC lightweight belt was vacated, Topuria didn't just take it, he ripped it from Charles Oliveira in the very first round, a thunderous KO that cemented him as the new king at 155 pounds. That's the resume of a phenom. Add to it his personality, fiery, confident, bilingual, connected to Spain and Georgia. He's got the showmanship to fill arenas, the ability to make fans chant his name, and the ego to think the world should stop and notice. And right now, the world is noticing, which is exactly why he's looking past the octagon. He doesn't just want to be a UFC star. He wants to be a global star. And for that, he needs boxing. Now, let's talk about the man he's calling out. Terence Crawford, 38 years old, 42 wins, no losses, 31 knockouts. He's one of the very few fighters in history to become the undisputed champion in 3 different weight classes. That's not just rare, that's historic. His most recent win, a unanimous decision over Canelo Alvarez, wasn't just a victory, it was a passing of the torch. Canelo was boxing's biggest star. Crawford outclassed him, out-hustled him, out-fought him. And in doing so, Crawford solidified himself as not only one of the pound-for-pound kings, but one of the greatest boxers of all time. He is a technician who can fight orthodox, fight southpaw, counterpunch, press, and adapt mid-fight better than anyone in the sport. If you're Ilia Topuria, this is the dream opponent. You don't call out an aging B-level boxer, you aim at the king. Because if you can bait him, if you can get him to say yes, suddenly you're in the biggest spectacle fight combat sports can produce. Topuria fired first, saying he'd knock Crawford out in a boxing ring, questioning his respect and mocking him after the walkout music incident. Crawford's response? He brushed it off with a smirk, called Topuria a clout chaser, said he'd never even seen him fight, compared him unfavorably to Conor McGregor, reminding the world that McGregor was at least a global superstar when he fought Floyd. Crawford's message was simple. You're not even on my radar. Topuria, of course, doubled down, reminded Crawford of their brief meeting in Las Vegas, accused him of forgetting, promised he'd represent MMA against boxing's best. And just like that, the headlines wrote themselves. But let's be honest, none of this back and forth means anything unless we answer the real question. Would Ilia Topuria even stand a chance against Terence Crawford in a boxing match? Topuria isn't stupid. He knows Crawford is a nightmare matchup, but he's not chasing this because he thinks it's an easy fight. He's chasing it because of the Conor McGregor playbook. Remember 2017? Conor had never boxed professionally in his life. He talked his way into the ring with Floyd Mayweather, arguably the greatest defensive boxer ever. He didn't win. He wasn't supposed to win. But the spectacle was so massive, it broke pay-per-view records. Conor made over $100 million. Floyd cashed $300 million. Both men walked away with their legacies intact and their bank accounts overflowing. That's the template. That's the dream. Topuria is trying to position himself as the next Conor, the crossover star who can bridge MMA and boxing. And Crawford, fresh off a legacy-defining win over Canelo, is the perfect dance partner. Terence Crawford is not new to dangerous opponents. He's fought and beaten some of the hardest punchers boxing has had to offer. Guys with real one-punch knockout power, who lived and breathed the sweet science every single day of their careers. And do you know what happened? Crawford adjusted, adapted, and dismantled them. Look back at names like Yuriorkis Gamboa, Kell Brook, Mean Machine, or Sean Porter. All fighters who could crack, all fighters who came in believing they could test Crawford's chin. Not only did Crawford weather their best shots, but he also figured them out and finished them. That's the kind of resume you're up against when you're talking about stepping into his world. Now, Ilia Topuria is a fantastic puncher in MMA. He's iced legends like Holloway, Volkanovski, and Oliveira with hands that carry fight-ending power. But let's be clear, MMA striking is not boxing. It's a different rhythm, a different distance, a different art. In the cage, you can set up your punches with kicks, with takedowns, with feints that make an opponent worry about knees or elbows. In boxing, you've only got the hands. And Crawford is a master of taking that away, breaking down timing, and punishing mistakes. So here's where I stand, and I'll say it plain. In a pure boxing match, Ilia Topuria does not stand a chance against Terence Crawford. None. Crawford is too slick, too seasoned, too damn smart between the ropes. He's beaten better punchers than Ilia, guys who have lived in boxing gyms since they were kids, and he made them look ordinary. Topuria wouldn't be any different. Now, flip it around. Put Crawford in a UFC cage, under MMA rules, he wouldn't last. That's Ilia's world. The threat of takedowns, the elbows, the grappling. Crawford has no answers for that. Just like Topuria has no answers for Crawford's 30 years of boxing polish. And that's the point here. These are two different sports, two different languages. Beautiful in their own way, but you don't become fluent overnight. Conor McGregor found that out against Floyd. Topuria would find that out against Crawford. And no amount of walkout songs or social media jabs is going to change that reality. Dana White has historically hated letting UFC fighters cross into boxing. He fought tooth and nail before letting Conor fight Floyd, and only did it because the money was astronomical. Even then, Dana still calls it a one-off circus. For Topuria to get this fight, he'd need Crawford to want it, fans to demand it, and Dana to see dollar signs. That's a tall order. But here's the thing. Combat sports runs on money, not logic. If enough noise builds, if Topuria keeps winning, if Crawford doesn't have another mega fight lined up, the unthinkable could happen. Is it likely? No. Is it impossible? Also number. For Crawford, the risk is low. He'd make easy money beating an MMA fighter in his own sport. But the reward? Questionable. He doesn't need Topuria to cement his legacy. He doesn't even need him financially after the Canelo fight. For Topuria, the upside is massive. Even if he loses, he cashes out with life-changing money and becomes a bigger star. The risk? If he looks foolish, if he gets embarrassed badly, it could hurt his aura when he returns to MMA. But Ilia is gambling that the reward outweighs the risk. That's why he's shouting Crawford's name every chance he gets. And this is where we zoom out. Because at the end of the day, combat sports isn't just about belts or records or even legacy. It's about connection, about moments that live forever in the hearts of fans. Which brings us to Ricky Hatton. Hatton was never the greatest fighter of all time. He wasn't undefeated, he didn't retire with spotless records or the kind of technical brilliance Crawford carries. But to Manchester, to England, he was more than a fighter. He was family. Hatton was the everyman, the blue-collar kid who carried his city into battle every time he stepped into the ring. When he fought, Manchester stopped. The pubs filled, the streets buzzed, and the world had to turn its eyes to a proud city in the north of England. That's what made Ricky Hatton special. Not perfection, not greatness by numbers, but greatness by love. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this. Whether Ilia Topuria ever fights Terence Crawford doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme. What matters is the chase, the ambition, the attempt to carve out moments that fans will never forget. Because combat sports is a collection of feelings, of nights where the underdog shocks the world, of fighters who carry their hometowns on their backs, of men like Ricky Hatton, who reminded us that for one night, sport can belong to everyone. So when we talk about Ilia and Crawford, remember, it's not just about boxing versus MMA. It's about the stories we tell, the rivalries we build, and the way fighters, no matter how flawed, can make us feel something bigger than ourselves. And in that sense, Ricky Hatton's shadow looms over every fighter chasing greatness today. Because legends aren't always made in the record books. Sometimes they're made in the hearts of the people who needed them most. Rest in peace, Hitman. I'm Reggie Cross for Behind the Lines. If you're feeling the vibe, hit that subscribe, and remember, hype fades, legacy don't. Peace. 745 with